Hi, this is Gabe from FluentForever.com. In these 4 videos, I'm going to show you the bare essentials of phonetics and spelling for Cantonese. If you're using one of my pronunciation trainers, don't worry about memorizing this stuff. The trainer will do that for you. Just watch and pay attention. Everything you see here will show up sooner or later within the trainer. I'll be going through Cantonese using the International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA. This lets us simplify our discussion a lot, since I only need to talk about 31 symbols or so, many of which you know already, instead of trying to wade through around 100 spelling rules. So, that said, let's get started. We'll break this discussion up into 4 parts. The first will cover the Cantonese tones and give you a quick overview of the spelling system we're using. The second will cover the Cantonese consonants. The third will cover the vowels, and the fourth will cover a few of Cantonese's spelling rules. Since I don't speak Cantonese, I have a native speaker here, Tim.
Hi.
Who'll be helping throughout. We'll start with the Cantonese writing systems, and then get into tones. Cantonese, like Mandarin, uses logograms for its writing system instead of an alphabet. To oversimplify a bit, each character in Cantonese means something, in comparison with the system we use in English, where each character sounds like something. Cantonese characters don't provide much information about how to say the words, and as such, we're going to be using Jyutping, a commonly used phonetic system for transcribing Cantonese, throughout these videos. Jyutping is handy because it lets you read and even type in Cantonese without having to learn any new characters.
This word, for instance, is pronounced san. If you know how to read it, the Jyutping transcription will give you all the information you need to pronounce it correctly.
Jyutping is fairly straightforward. Basically, every syllable you can say in Cantonese has 2 parts, an initial part and a final part.
So in the word fa, the initial is f, and the final a. In long, the initial is l, and the final is ong. And in sun, the initial is s, and the final is un.
You can also have syllables that don't have an initial.
They're just the final sitting on its own, like in ao, ong, oi.
All in all, the Jyutping alphabet has 19 initials and 56 finals, which can be stuck together in around 630 different ways. And this, incidentally, is a tiny number of possible syllables. For comparison, English has nearly 16,000 possible syllables, some as complex as the one-syllable words twelfths or glimpsed. So, Cantonese ends up having a lot of homophones. Words that in English would be something like dear and dear, which sound the same and can only be told apart through context and, when written, spelling. One of the ways that Cantonese helps reduce the number of homophones in its language is by adding tones. So, let's figure out what a tone is. We'll start with a short sentence in English. She bought a dog. Now, I can say this sentence in numerous ways. She bought a dog. She bought a dog. She bought a dog. And if we zoom in a bit on just the word dog, 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 you'll find that you can tell the difference between a question, a statement, and a kind of sarcastic question all through the pitch or tone of my voice. Questions start at a middle pitch and go up. Statements start high and go down, and sarcastic questions tend to start low and come back up to the middle. Where English uses tone to convey emotional information, and whether I'm asking a question or not, Cantonese uses tone as an integral part of each of its words. It's just as important as a vowel or a consonant in telling one word for another.
For instance, the difference between ma, mother, and ma, horse.
Once you start including tones as a key feature of Cantonese syllables, you bump the possible syllables in Cantonese up from 600 to 1760. All in all, Cantonese has 6 tones, which are as follows.
Tone 1 is the high tone, and you'll find it in words like si, su, hao, sung.
It's high and sustained. In the Jyutping system, you'll see the syllable written followed by the number 1 afterwards, like this. Now, if you look at descriptions of Cantonese from 20 years ago, you'll see some discussion of a high-level tone like we've been talking about here, and also a different high-falling tone.
You'd read about examples like sam, meaning shirt, and then sam, meaning the number 3.
But Cantonese is changing, and this distinction is rapidly disappearing, especially in Hong Kong, which is the variety of Cantonese we're focusing on here. For a new learner, you're going to be just fine if you train yourself to hear and pronounce a single high tone, as long as you know that some speakers may drop down in pitch a bit at the ends of their tone ones. So, our next 2 tones, These start at the middle of your voice. Tone 2 is the medium rising tone. So it starts at a middle pitch and goes all the way up. And it sounds much like the tone we use in English to ask a question.
It sounds like this. 屎, 鬼, 手, 爪.
Now, tone 3. This one is the medium level tone. And it sounds just like described. It starts in the middle of your voice and it stays there level.
As in, 撕, 張, 爆炸.
It has a bit of a robotic feel to it. The rest of our tones start at the lower end of your voice. Tone 4 is the low falling tone. To my ear, it sounds somewhat depressed.
時, 像, 懸崖.
Tone 5 is the low rising tone. To my ear, it sounds like a somewhat sarcastic question. Something like this.
馬, 屎, 肚腩.
Our last tone is tone 6, which is the low level tone. It's another slightly robotic feeling tone, just pronounced at this point at the bottom of your voice.
是, 像, 玩具.
And with that, we've covered all the 6 tones of Cantonese. Now, you may run into some descriptions of Cantonese that say that Cantonese has 9 tones, but that's overcomplicating things, really. Let me explain. Cantonese has some finals that end in K, T, or P. These finals are always short. Those 3 letters basically cut off at the end of the word.
Giving you syllables like ip, it.
In these cases, there's not really much time to start at one pitch and then move down or up from there.
If you're just saying something like sick, it'd be hard to go all the way from I to I and go I as in a tone 2.
For that reason, when you're dealing with any of these shorter syllables, you only have 3 options instead of 6. You could say them high, medium, or low. So if someone's telling you that Hong Kong Cantonese has 9 tones, well, those extra 3 tones they've added, they aren't really new tones at all. They're just high, medium, and low when the last letter of the word is a K, T, or P. The Jyutping romanization system we're using only has tones 1 through 6. And for those shorter syllables ending in K, T, and P, the only thing special is that you're usually not going to see those syllables with rising or falling tones, like 2, 4, and 5 written next to them. So that's all you need to know about tones. Before we review, I wanted to spend just a minute talking about Cantonese romanization systems. Unlike Mandarin, which has a standardized system known as pinyin for writing out pronunciation, Cantonese hasn't really settled on a single standard. So Jyutping is only one of several ways to write out Cantonese pronunciation. Among the more popular ones are Yale romanization and Cantonese pinyin. There are pros and cons of each system, and you may find that your Cantonese textbook, for instance, uses Yale, while we're learning Jyutping here, which will require that you do some conversions in your head. The reason I ended up going for Jyutping in these videos and in my trainers is because it's widely used, especially on the internet, and, at least in my opinion, it's the most logical and straightforward of the spelling systems. And so with that, we've covered all we're going to do for tones and for a quick intro to Jyutping. To quickly review, we talked about how Jyutping works by combining initials, finals, and tone numbers to give you all the information you might need to pronounce a word. And then we went into these 6 tones of Cantonese.
The high tone, si,
which was high and sustained.
The mid-rising tone, si,
which starts in the middle of your range and moves up like a question.
The mid-level tone, si,
which sits in the middle of your range and stays put, a little bit robotically.
The low falling tone, si,
which starts low and then goes lower, sounding a little bit depressed.
The low rising tone, si,
which starts low and then rises, sounding a bit like a sarcastic question.
And last, the low level tone, si,
which starts low and stays there, also a little bit robotically. And with that, we've covered everything for Cantonese's tones. Next stop, consonants.